welcome to Hashimoto's Unfiltered, real talk, real solutions. The podcast where we cut through the noise and get straight to the heart of living with Hashimoto's. My name is Dr. Ray Benedetto, your host, and I'm here to share my expertise, personal insights, and from time to time, conversations with incredible guests to help you take control of your health. Together, we'll explore actionable items, debunk myths, and navigate the complexities of your thyroid health. So whether you're newly diagnosed or a seasoned warrior, this is your space for unfiltered truth and real hope. Let's dive in. Today's topic, mold and mycotoxins as an underlying trigger or an underlying root cause to someone's Hashimoto's. I get this question a lot from you guys. I get this question a lot from lots of people and emails and messaging and private messages and consultations and you name it. So we're going to do a little deep dive today on all things mold and mycotoxins. And if you guys have any questions, let me know. Let's dig in. Now, my little disclaimer. Mold and mycotoxins need to be considered as a potential underlying cause to someone's Hashimoto's. For Hashimoto's in general, we usually find multiple underlying triggers or multiple underlying root causes. It's almost never just one thing. But this needs to be considered. It's not an underlying root cause for everybody. It is an underlying root cause for a lot of people that is either ignored, never checked for, never even considered. So I want you to have that context for today's talk. Not everybody has it. Not everybody has to deal with it, but it is a significant problem that is often overlooked and, or if it's identified, not handled properly. So we have to, again, always take into account with any underlying trigger or with any underlying root cause, the relationship between mold exposure, mycotoxins, and autoimmune diseases, particularly autoimmune thyroid conditions, that's what we're talking about today, is complex. It's never a straight line. Like you guys have always heard me talk about when we're talking about figuring out someone's underlying root causes, it's never a straight line. There's a lot of moving parts. It's complicated. Let's start with how mold and mycotoxins can impact the immune system to start. Let's start with, let's say, immune system disruption. First of all, what are mycotoxins? So mycotoxins are the toxic substances that are produced by molds. They're produced by mold and yeast and all these different fungi. Is really what we're talking about, fungus. These things can significantly disrupt the immune system. They can lead to both suppression of the immune system, but also can stimulate immune system overactivation. So, and this dysregulation in the immune system, or this overactivity or this suppression, or both, kind of vacillating between both, can obviously contribute to a state of chronic inflammation. I'm always talking about that. It's like this stuff, one of the roots of all evil here is this stuff causing chronic systemic inflammation, which is like, ask any of my patients, like the first thing we have to deal with. It's like, well, one of the first things we have to deal with is getting the chronic systemic inflammation under control, because that there is a key factor in the development of an autoimmune disease, which is what we're talking about here. Now, mycotoxins can also contribute to leaky gut syndrome. Leaky gut, we talk about the gut all the time. It is a prerequisite primarily of someone developing an autoimmune condition is they get leaky gut syndrome. So mycotoxins can damage the lining of the intestines, leading to increased intestinal permeability, which we call leaky gut. And then when the gut barrier, the lining of the gut is compromised, substances and things that normally wouldn't get into our bloodstream get into the bloodstream, like things that aren't supposed to be there. And that can trigger the immune responses, which again, it's now it's a cascading effect. So it triggers the autoimmune responses because now we got things getting into the bloodstream that aren't supposed to be there. And then this can then contribute to added systemic inflammation. So now we're snowballing. Things are just kind of piling on. That's number 2. So immune system disruption contributes to leaky gut syndrome. There's also this concept, and I've talked briefly about it before, and many of you have asked me about it too. There's this concept of molecular mimicry. And what that means, this is the concept with like Epstein-Barr virus infections, which I have talked about before on live streams. Molecular mimicry, meaning that these mycotoxins in this case, or like Epstein-Barr virus or foods like gluten, stuff like that, but mycotoxins may resemble certain human proteins. So like proteins that exist in our body, these mycotoxins can mimic them or look like them to our immune system. So this can lead to this phenomenon called molecular mimicry, where it's the immune system in its attempt to attack the mycotoxins, just like the immune system in the attempt to attack the food particle, like gluten, say, can also mistakenly attack the body's own tissues because they look similar at the protein level. I know this sounds wild, but it's a thing. It's a legit thing. Obviously, including the thyroid gland. So in this particular case, the thyroid gland can be attacked. Again, we talked about the inflammatory response. Mold mycotoxins are going to cause this chronic inflammatory response, which can trigger autoimmune diseases almost in conditions by itself, but can also, if we have an autoimmune condition already in process, for example, can pile on. So that inflammatory process can amplify or kind of blow up the ongoing autoimmune condition. And then what we talk about as well are, and again, you may have come across these terms, are something called endocrine disruption. So mold mycotoxins, they're considered endocrine disruptors, meaning that they can disrupt hormone systems and they can affect hormone binding sites. Right? So for example, a lot of you out there see all this marketing going on in social media world about fixing the cell. It has to be done. That's a marketing angle, but like it's not wrong. It has to be done. When we talk about fixing the cell, a big part of what we're talking about is being able to get a hormone into the cell to do its job. So there's receptors on the cell. It's like a lock and key. There's receptors on the cell that the hormone needs to get to, lock into that receptor to activate its action, for example, to get the cell to do what it needs to do. Like think of insulin. Insulin's got glucose, gets to the cell, gets onto an insulin receptor on the cell, and then transports the glucose, the blood sugar, into the cell to burn for fuel. So mold is a major endocrine disruptor. So it can disrupt the hormone systems in general and cause imbalances, but it can really interfere with some of those hormone receptors. And this is the problem with testing only thyroid hormone in the blood. There may be a ton of it in the blood and it's not getting into the cells because we have hormone disruptors or endocrine disruptors like mold, like heavy metals. We have inflammation will block all these things. There's that dirty word, inflammation again. So mold or mycotoxins can act as endocrine disruptors as well. Now, again, autoimmune thyroid conditions are the most common thyroid condition. Hashimoto's in general by far is the most common cause. And again, there's growing evidence, and there has been a lot of growing evidence that environmental factors need to be considered, mold exposure being one of them. It's something that needs to be looked at in a lot of people, to be honest with you. And again, we talked about how mold and mycotoxins can act as these endocrine disruptors or these hormone disruptors. For the thyroid specifically, mold exposure can directly affect thyroid function by interfering with hormone production, but also conversion, T4 to T3, and again, interfere with these binding sites. So you can have all the thyroid hormone in the world in your blood, and it's not getting into your cells because it's being blocked or affected by these hormone disruptors or inflammation, things like that. So that's why they got to be addressed. Some things to consider, and then we'll talk about like, what do we do about this if it's identified as a problem? Now, some things to consider. There is an individual variability to all of this. Not everyone who gets exposed to mold will go on to develop an autoimmune disease. And not everyone that has an autoimmune disease has mold or mycotoxins as an underlying cause. So that's why we need to take every single person's case individually. But not everyone who gets exposed to mold will develop an autoimmune condition. What plays a significant role here is genetic predisposition. I know you guys have heard me talk about this many, many times, is you have to have the genetic predisposition, you have to have immune system breakdown, and you have to have root causes or triggers of which mold or mycotoxins would be one of them. You have to have all of those three things in line to develop an autoimmune condition. So we have to always take into consideration that just because you get exposed to mold doesn't mean you're going to go ahead and develop an autoimmune condition. Your genetic predisposition and a lot of other factors play a significant role. Obviously, too, though, the severity of the exposure and the duration of the exposure, if it's like a large amount of mold or for a very long period of time, that can increase your risk. So again, let's talk about then moving forward, like treatment. Let's talk specifically about what we got to do. So if we're suspicious, we need to identify the presence of mold. I mean, a lot of times it's not hard to find because you can see it, but we need to worry about, like, obviously water exposure. So we look at things like basements and attics. And one thing also to consider, HVAC systems. This can be in our home, but this can also be in our place of work. So all things we need to consider. We need to be super hyper vigilant after any kind of water exposure, water in your basement. When you're moving into a new house, inspections, you look at termites and all this kind of jazz too. We got to look for mold. So we want to always look for evidence of it. If we're suspicious, we can test for it. There are special companies that will come in and test your house or place of work or what have you. Might need to bring it up to your employer if you're suspicious of it. And they may not be so helpful, unfortunately. I've had many cases of that where, like, people work in these large buildings and the mold actually got through the HVAC systems and they were more susceptible to it and someone else wasn't. So all things that need to be considered. So obviously, if we're suspicious, we need to identify if there is a source of mold in our environment. Obviously, if there is, then we need to do everything we can to safely remove it. That's step one. Step two, however, is, let's say I've done that, but I've already been exposed to it, like the wheels have already been set in motion. Like it's too late to put the toothpaste back in the tube. Yes, we want to remove the source, but we also now need to clean up the damage that has occurred from it. So that may include testing the person. There's different testing we can do to test if someone has high levels of these mycotoxins in this mold in their body. If so, we need to deal with it. We need to eliminate it, whether that be through, obviously, typically nutritional supplements, targeted stuff, and then clean up any of the collateral damage, i.e. the autoimmune disease that has now come about because of it. We need to take care of that as well. That's always why, and you guys have heard me bang this drum over and over and over again. It's always why we need a super comprehensive approach to treating these conditions. Yes, addressing mold is important, but it's crucial to take mold exposure into account as part of a comprehensive approach to managing autoimmune conditions, including looking for and addressing other potential triggers, root causes, putting together a game plan for the person to figure that stuff out and to treat those things. It's almost never a straight line, a one cause, one cure thing. You'll see books out there like it's all Epstein-Barr virus, it's all gluten, it's all mold. It's not. It's just not. It's not the case. Could there be one big gigantic one that's like bigger than the rest for people? Yeah. But it's never the same across the board for everybody. It's always a different combination of issues that added up to cause somebody's Hashimoto's or somebody's autoimmune condition. And it's always individual. It's got to be, we have to, even if we start, like I start with treatment plans with my patients and like, we start with a framework, but then it always has to be individualized over time because we're going to find different stuff popping up on everybody, adding up to cause the same end result, which is an autoimmune condition affecting their thyroid usually, obviously, maybe other places too. So I hope that makes sense. I know you guys have heard me say that over and over and over again. Yes, we want to address like specific triggers or specific root causes because they're common and I get a lot of questions on them, but we always have to take it into account as a comprehensive approach to evaluating and managing each individual person with the potential of a mold toxicity or a mycotoxin exposure as a piece of that puzzle. I hope that makes sense. And I know you guys have heard me bang that drum over and over and over again, but it bears repeating over and over and over again because it's just not a one cause, one cure thing. With complex autoimmune conditions, it's never a straight line. It's never like this and that, and we fix this and it's perfect. Just like people ask me questions all the time about like supplements. What's the magic supplement to do for X, Y, and Z? It doesn't exist. I wish it did, but it doesn't. I want to thank you for tuning in to Hashimoto's Unfiltered, Real Talk, Real Solutions. Again, my name is Dr. Ray Benedetto, and I hope today's episode helped to give you the tools and the insights you need to take another step forward on your Hashimoto's journey. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode if you think someone could benefit. You can also connect with me on Facebook at Dr. Ray Benedetto and on my website, drraybenedetto.com for more resources and updates. Until next time, remember, you're not alone and real solutions are always within reach. Take care and be well.